Empathy. We hear about it all the time. We're told to be more empathetic. Schools talk about teaching empathy. Leaders are urged to show it. But here's the strange thing. Many people can't actually define what empathy really is. We confuse it with being nice, or being polite, or just saying the right thing at the right moment. The truth is, empathy is something much harder and much deeper. It's the ability to step into another person's experience without losing track of your own. And it isn't just a moral trait, it's a psychological skill. Like any skill, it can be built or it can be neglected. For some people, empathy feels dangerous. For others, it feels exhausting. But without it, our connections thin out. Families fracture. Communities grow hostile. And we end up in a world where nobody really feels seen. That's what we're talking about today. What empathy actually is, how it develops, what gets in the way, and most importantly, how you can learn to practice it.
Hello and welcome to The Psychology of Us with Professor RJ Starr, where we explore the mind's influence on life, relationships, and society. RJ Starr is an existential psychologist, professor, and author dedicated to exploring the core challenges of human existence, how we find meaning, embrace responsibility, and navigate life's challenges. Known for a thought-provoking yet accessible approach, RJ inspires listeners to cultivate self-awareness, emotional intelligence, authenticity, and purpose. This podcast is designed for all psychology enthusiasts, practitioners, students, and anyone curious about why we think, feel, and behave the way we do. Each episode unpacks theories, explores complex questions, and offers insights that deepen understanding of the human experience. So settle in, stay curious, and discover the psychology of us.
Empathy matters more than almost any other psychological skill we can name. It is the invisible bridge between people. It's the thing that allows us to recognize not just what someone is saying, but what they are actually living. Most of us think of empathy as being nice or feeling sorry, but that's sympathy, not empathy. Sympathy says, I feel bad for you. Empathy says, I will step into your perspective and feel with you. That difference may sound subtle, but it changes everything. Think about the relationships that have shaped you. A friend who sat with you when you were going through something painful. A teacher who understood your struggle when others dismissed it. A partner who recognized your fear before you even had words for it. What made those moments powerful wasn't sympathy, it was empathy. The felt sense that someone was actually with you in the experience. Psychology has long shown us that empathy predicts cooperation, trust, and resilience. Teams that practice empathy are more creative and more loyal. Families that teach empathy raise children who are better able to regulate their emotions and connect with others. And societies with higher levels of empathy are less prone to cruelty and dehumanization. The absence of empathy, on the other hand, is devastating. When it's missing, conflict escalates quickly. Misunderstandings multiply. People begin to feel invisible, and invisibility breeds anger. In workplaces, the absence of empathy turns teams into combat zones. In families, it leaves family members isolated under the same roof. And in culture, it fuels division, hatred, and hostility. So here's the first truth. Empathy is not optional. It is foundational. It is the cornerstone of every healthy relationship we will ever have, whether personal or professional. And it is just as essential for communities and societies as it is for individuals. Which leads to the big question. If empathy is so critical, why do so many people struggle with it? Why does it feel like some people are born with it, while others can't seem to access it at all. Empathy begins long before we ever have words for it. A newborn doesn't know language, but they know the difference between a face that responds to them and a face that turns away. Those are early moments set the stage. When a caregiver mirrors a child's expression, when they pick them up and soothe their distress, the child learns that feelings can be recognized, shared, and responded to. That's the seed of empathy. Attachment theory in psychology shows us how powerful these first experiences are. A securely attached child learns that the world is generally safe, that emotions can be tolerated, and that other people can be trusted to show up. An insecurely attached child, on the other hand, may learn that emotions are overwhelming or unimportant. If every cry is ignored or every feeling is met with anger, the child adapts by shutting down. That adaptation may protect them in the short term, but it makes empathy harder to access later. Psychologists often distinguish between two sides of empathy. One is cognitive empathy, the ability to take another person's perspective, to imagine what they might be thinking or feeling. The other is affective empathy or affective empathy, the emotional resonance that happens when someone else's joy or pain stirs something inside of us. Both are important. Cognitive empathy helps us understand. Affective empathy helps us care. But neither of those can work well without self-regulation. To really feel with someone else, you have to be able to stay steady in your own body. If another person's sadness drowns you, you will retreat. If their anger overwhelms you, you will defend yourself. Regulation allows you to stay present long enough to connect without being hijacked. Now, case studies make this vivid. Imagine two children in the same classroom. One has grown up with consistent emotional attunement at home. When they see a classmate fall and cry, they are quick to kneel beside them, to offer comfort. Another child has grown up in a home where emotions were unsafe. When they see the same thing, they turn away or laugh nervously, not necessarily out of cruelty, but because stepping toward the pain feels unbearable. Both children are revealing what they've learned about empathy years before they'll ever be able to talk about it in abstract terms. Empathy is not fixed at birth. It is shaped, modeled, and practiced across the lifetime. And while our early foundations matter, the capacity to deepen empathy remains open to us at any age. So if empathy can be learned, it can also be disrupted. Some of the barriers are cultural. We live in a time where speed outruns attention. Platforms reward outrage and mockery, and listening has been replaced by reacting. In that environment, empathy begins to feel like a liability. Well, that's the cultural side of it. There are also psychological blocks. When someone carries unresolved trauma, even the hint of another person's pain can feel overwhelming. Defensiveness often takes over. Instead of listening, they argue. Instead of staying open, they shut down. Projection is another block. People attribute their own unacknowledged feelings to others, which makes it nearly impossible to meet another person's experience with clarity. Social scripts reinforce these blocks. Many people grow up with the idea that empathy equals agreement. If I take the time to understand your perspective, it must mean that I'm endorsing it. That belief keeps people guarded. Others may equate empathy with weakness, fearing that it will make them look soft or easily manipulated. In competitive environments, that fear can be especially strong. You can see the results of this everywhere. In online spaces, debates quickly collapse into ridicule, not because the issues are trivial, but because empathy requires slowing down long enough to consider someone else's reality. That slowing down feels threatening to some, so people default to sarcasm or contempt. In families, you see conversations dissolve into cycles of blame where no one is listening because everyone is defending. In workplaces, too, you see colleagues talking past each other, interpreting every comment as an attack instead of an attempt to collaborate. Now, these blocks don't mean that empathy is gone. They mean it's being crowded out by noise, fear, and habit. What's missing is not the capacity, it's the discipline to clear the space for it. Empathy becomes real when it's practiced. It becomes real when it's practiced. It isn't a personality trait reserved for the gentle or the extroverted. It is a discipline that can be cultivated through intention and repetition. The first practice is slowing down before responding. Instead of rushing to give advice or share your own story, pause, reflect back what you think you heard, even if it's just a simple phrase. It sounds like you're frustrated. Now that pause does two things. One, it shows the other person they've been heard. And the other is that it gives you time to stay grounded in your own perspective. That's the first practice, slowing down before you respond. The second practice is curiosity. A single genuine question can open more connection than a dozen reassurances. Asking, "What was that like for you?" or "How did that feel?" invites another person to expand their inner world in front of you. It shifts the focus away from fixing and toward understanding. The third practice is noticing your own emotional reactions. If you feel irritation rising or a strong urge to defend yourself, that's the moment to recognize your own limits. Empathy doesn't mean abandoning yourself in someone else's feelings. It means staying steady enough to hold both your experience and theirs without collapsing into either one. Stories remind us why this matters. Think of a time when someone looked at you and really understood what you were going through. They didn't try to solve it, and they didn't return it back to themselves. They simply made room for you to exist as you were. Those moments don't just pass. They stay with us, sometimes for years. They remind us of what it feels like to be human together. Practicing empathy doesn't require grand gestures. It requires attention, patience, and the willingness to be moved by another person's reality without losing track of your own. When we learn that, we begin to see how empathy is not just about kindness. It's about building the conditions for connection, for dignity, for repair, in a world that desperately needs more of all three. Empathy is often treated like a soft virtue, something optional, something nice to have. But the truth is, it's one of the hardest and most necessary skills we can ever practice. It asks us to stretch beyond our own perspective without losing ourselves in someone else's. It requires courage, emotional steadiness, and the willingness to stay present when retreating or attacking would feel easier. The good news is that empathy is not a gift you either have or don't. It is a skill that can be learned, sharpened, and lived out in daily life. Every time we pause to reflect back, every time we choose curiosity instead of judgment, every time we recognize someone else's humanity instead of dismissing it, we are practicing empathy. And those small practices, repeated across time, are what repair relationships. They are what restore communities and keep us from slipping into the loneliness of disconnection.
That wraps up this episode of The Psychology of Us with Professor RJ Starr. Each conversation is a step toward greater understanding of ourselves, each other, and the forces that shape human behavior. Listeners are invited to continue the conversation by sharing their thoughts, questions, and topic suggestions at profrjstarr@outlook.com. Every message helps shape future episodes, ensuring the discussions remain relevant, thought-provoking, and meaningful. For those who find value in these explorations, subscribing and leaving a review is a great way to support the podcast and bring these insights to a wider audience. Until next time, stay curious, stay thoughtful, and keep exploring the psychology of us.